Alice shook me until I woke up. She was convinced that she had heard screaming. I listened for a few minutes but didn't hear anything. I was drifting off again when she poked at me again. There it was. Did you hear it? I didn't hear anything other than the dog snoring on the floor. No, I don't hear it. She threw the covers back and started up. I'm going to see what it is. I lay there half aware of what was happening. No, I'll go look. The night air hit me as I opened the front door. Its chill sent shivers down my legs. Stepping out onto the porch, I strained my ears. Standing there in my underwear, the only thing I heard was crickets. When I was convinced that nothing was screaming, I went back inside. There wasn't any screaming. I know there was, she said adamantly. Well, there wasn't any when I was outside, so I don't know what else to say. The next day, I made a point to ask my neighbor Eric if he had heard anything. Alice was certain that the screaming was coming from the direction of Eric's house. Eric had moved in the previous month, another story of divorce. He came by a couple of times to borrow this or that, but for the most part, he kept to himself. I knocked on his door. I was taken aback by the way he looked. Tired was an understatement. Hey, you okay? Yeah, just a little cold. I'll feel better tomorrow. What can I do for you? Well, Alice thought she heard screaming last night. She won't let it go. Did you hear anything? She probably heard me throwing up. I was up half the night with it. He blew his nose. The toilet paper came away red. Oh shit, I better go. Yeah, feel better, man. I came home after work that afternoon. Alice was sitting in the kitchen reading the paper. Hey, honey, how was work? Jared was on my ass all day. Oh, that's not good. Why? The rebranding that I've been stressing about, remember? Her face pinched in concentration. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Just tired, I guess. You couldn't go back to sleep last night? Not really. I was watching her as she continued to browse the sports section. Don't get me wrong, Alice was a big football fan, but she had never been one for box scores. You should have taken a nap today. I was going to, but Eric stopped by to apologize. He said he was sick last night and he must have been the noise we heard. He didn't look too good when I saw him this morning. Oh yeah, he looked dreadful, but I invited him in for some lunch and he seemed better when he left. Dinner was light that night. I wasn't in the mood for anything heavy, and Alice said that she was still full from lunch. Randy, our chocolate lab, usually begged for food no matter what we had, but he didn't come into the dining room. I held out part of my sandwich and still he only sniffed, then gave me a pitiful look. Has Randy been weird all day? I asked Alice. No, he's been fine. Why? He's just not in here begging. I wonder if he's sick. Maybe he needs to go out. I'll put him out back. Alice walked toward Randy. He whimpered, backing away. Come on, Randy, let's go outside. He continued to back away. Alice grabbed him by the collar and started to lead him, but he snapped out at her hand. I yelled at him as I jumped up off my chair. He ran back to his bed. I grabbed some paper towels, expecting a mess of blood. There wasn't. He had got her pretty good, but she was hardly bleeding. He didn't get me that bad, she laughed. I gave her the paper towels and put Randy in the backyard. I pulled the first aid kit from the guest bathroom and wrapped Alice's hand. It had already stopped bleeding, but I figured it was better to be safe. That night, Randy slept in the guest bedroom because his behavior was still strange toward Alice, the person that had been his number one for 6 years. I felt the bed shift. I looked over. It was 3:15 in the morning. Alice wasn't in bed. I was getting up to go look for her, but I dozed and fell back off. I heard our faucet turn on. I looked at the clock again. It was 4:30. What are you doing? I asked, 3/4 still asleep. Just had to use the bathroom. She kissed me. I recoiled slightly. Her breath was rank and coppery. What's wrong? Her face was empty. Something smells bad. Randy used the bathroom in the house. That's probably what you're smelling. I nodded and dropped back off. Alice was already in the kitchen when I walked in. She was dressed for December and April. I made some coffee and offered her some. She waved her hand in refusal. Randy was usually laid out by her side in the mornings, but he was missing. Where's Randy? I put him outside, she said flatly. Are you okay? She turned and smiled. Yeah, I'm fine. You sure? Yeah, I'm fine, really. Is Randy okay? She turned back, staring at the window. Yeah, I think he's going to be just fine now. I grabbed my stuff and headed for work. Outside, I did a double take. Eric, Alice said Randy had escaped while I was at work. She had tried to walk him, but he slipped his leash. Though in the 6 years we had him, he had only ever been walked a handful of times. We had fenced in our backyard so that he could run around out there. I spent that evening knocking on doors and canvassing the neighbors. None of them had seen Randy. I put up posters, but after a week he still hadn't shown up, or even a clue shared about where he was. Alice also started wearing more perfume as the days passed. The floral notes blended with a sick, sweet odor. Her nails had also become black and earthen. As the days fed into May, the heat picked up outside. This also brought a new level of stress. Eric's car hadn't returned. Alice and I had begun sleeping in separate bedrooms. I begged her to let me understand what was happening with her. She would always smile and say nothing was wrong, and by the last week of April, I couldn't stand the smell of her. There was also a new smell that kept sweeping through the house whenever the air conditioning came on. It smelled of hamburger left in the sun. I couldn't take it anymore. I made plans to go camping with a couple of my friends that weekend. I needed my tent from the attic. When I pulled the rope, the smell fell on me with putrid weight. I climbed the ladder, choking with each step. As I reached the top, I heard a squelch coming from the corner. A dry heave racked my body. The sound stopped. There was a shuffle. I found out I was pregnant the same day I found out my partner was dying. How cruel, right? I thought it was nerves. I was worried sick about his scans. I kept throwing up, my head pressed against the cool porcelain of the toilet, my heart aching for Jasper. It started with a headache, just a stupid, insignificant migraine he had one night while we were in bed. Tylenol couldn't touch it. Then he started complaining of dizziness. I always thought he was clumsy. His sense of direction was abysmal. He tripped over his own feet and walked into push doors. That was just him. It was why I fell for him. I thought for sure his dizziness was just him. But when the vomiting started, I took him to a doctor. I thought maybe he needed glasses. But his MRI came back with a shadow on his brain. I started throwing up. 3 mornings in a row. I felt physically sick, unable to leave the bathroom. No, this wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. The doctor used words like might, impossibility, but holding his hand, it's like I knew. Tumor is a strange word. It's just a word, a collection of sounds. But hearing it out loud is like no pain I've never known. Glioblastoma. We'll do everything we can. That's what the doctor said with an expression that tried to be reassuring, tried to be hopeful. 25 was fucking cruel. Jasper didn't speak. He calmly stood up, suffocated me in a hug, and left the room. I pretended not to feel him trembling. He wasn't even finished with college. We had plans for post-graduation. Japan, Fuji, marriage. I wasn't even thinking of kids right yet. Grief was hard to fully register. I drove home and vomited again, violently. It felt like I was dying too. I was going to lose him. There was no future with him in it. In 5 years, he'd be a memory, a rotting corpse. I never believed in an afterlife. It's all bullshit. Dying is oblivion. In 10 years, he'd be gone. Nothing left. My period was late. I waited for it to come. Maybe grief had delayed it, but it never came, even when I for sure thought I felt it. I picked up a pregnancy test in the store and dumped it in my basket. I took it right there in the groceries bathroom, and I threw it on the floor after a plus sign appeared. I bought another, my stomach churning. The cashier asked if I was okay. No. Grief slows the world down. It's being unsure how many times I'd spoken with my heart, why my entire vocabulary was just fuck. I tried again after I got home. Another plus. I screamed, throwing it at the wall. I wasn't. I couldn't be. Because how? How could I be happy when I felt like I was dying? I'm pregnant, I told Jasper, squeezing his hands. His symptoms were getting worse. I ignored his erratic behavior, his mood swings and memory loss. I won't have it, I whispered, catching hold of myself. Liar. I did want it, because it was half of him, and half of him was enough. Jasper's smile was sad. He kissed me softly. I love you more than anything, he whispered. I'm dying, and it sucks, right? His laugh made me laugh. Contagious. Jasper cut my cheeks. But think about it like this. Was he saying this to make me feel better? It's our child. I support you. Always. His eyes glistened. But you'll be carrying a piece of me with you. I broke apart in the crook of his neck, and he splintered apart too, wrapping his arms around me. It's our own little miracle, he whispered. And who knows? Maybe it'll bring me back to you. So I decided to keep it, a tiny piece of him. Jasper was overjoyed. He insisted on baby shopping with me, even when I had to push him around in a wheelchair. I learned to ignore when he had to stay in bed, when he spent half of the morning kneeling in the bathroom. My bump grew. The doctor told me it was a boy. Jasper spent longer in bed and was swiftly moved to the hospital when he stopped responding to chemotherapy. He was in and out of sleep, barely responsive, his clammy hands wrapped around mine. Grief was denial. I kept thinking he was fine. I even packed his bag, but then his breaths grew shallower. Jasper died smiling. He died smiling at my bump. I thought we had time. I thought he'd at least see the birth. I spent the next week in bed. A nurse came to see me about the baby and quit the next day. I didn't care. I didn't care about anything. 2 months later, my water broke. I was rushed to hospital screeching, agony ripping my stomach apart. When I was rushed in, one nurse fainted. The other threw up. Wide-eyed nurses crowded around me, suffocating me and prodding my belly. I was taken to surgery. Apparently, the baby was too big for a natural birth. There's no way she'll push that out. But I was in so much pain, I didn't care. Blood gushed down my legs. Get him out! I managed to grit out, white-hot pain rattling my spine. I could feel the force of him ripping me open. It was too late for anesthesia. My body jerked violently as scalpels sliced into my abdomen. Get him out of me, I wailed. Please, get him out! The lead nurse cut me open and staggered back, her eyes unseeing. When she started screaming, a fully grown head, emerged from my stomach, twisting around to face me. Jasper, a grin splitting his lips apart. See? He said, choking up water. He shook his head, his eyes blinking open. Told you I'd be back. My uncle, who was a drunkard, died recently due to liver failure. I wasn't really sad about his passing because he was abusive. I had to live with my aunt and uncle after my father died young, and my mother left to work abroad. I didn't grieve. He was quite abusive, and often when he came home at night drunk, he would vent his anger on me, saying that I was an inconvenience and useless. My aunt always turned a blind eye toward his aggression. I was actually relieved by his passing. It brought a little bit of peace to the house. During his wake, only a few people came, which was understandable. I also remember helping my aunt cover the mirrors around the house. I asked why, and she replied that it was to help Uncle pass peacefully and not linger. The sound of my uncle, who always knocked frantically at night while drunk, was replaced with an eerie silence. Eventually, the last night of the wake came. It was not a typical night where bands blasted loud music and tables were filled with cards and coins. It was just silent. Morning came, the day of my uncle's procession. With the few people we had, we paraded him to the burial site. We eventually buried him and never looked back as we returned home. I heard a frantic knock on the front door later that night. It sounded just like my uncle's. He always knocked at the same time every night after drinking with his friends. I was always the one to open the door. If I did, he would be aggressive. But if I didn't, he would beat me in the morning. I was in a daze, wondering who could be knocking at the front door in the middle of the night. Could it be visitors from my aunt? No, she didn't bring anyone to the house. Maybe it was my cousin, their son, who had been absent because of their bad history. I stood in the living room, debating whether to open the door, when my aunt told me not to. I was curious but didn't question her. I just went back to my room. In the morning, I asked my aunt who had been on the other side of the door. It was your uncle, she replied. I was stunned as she explained that on the first night after a procession, the soul of the dead returns home. I sat there stiff, thinking to myself, what would have happened if I had opened that door?